Salam, friends. I'm back with Pouria Montazeri, and we are talking about the beauty, the love, the scent of Sufism. Salam, Pouria. How are you?
Salam, Tanya John. I'm doing great. So wonderful to be with you again.
So wonderful to see you. The last time we were talking about the relationship between Maulana Rumi and Shamsi Tabriz, this intense love and this heart connection that the two of them had that would take them into sohbets for so very long. They would just dive deep into the world of the heart and the spirit. And I want to talk about that longing a little bit today. But not just the longing that Maulana Rumi and Shamsi Tabriz elucidated for us and lived for us, and we can read and learn about it through Maulana's work, but also the longing that we as present day humans living in the 21st century still experience. This ache, this craving, this yearning that never really seems to go away. It's almost like there is a soft undercurrent to our existence. At the base of it, somewhere in the abyss of the ocean, there's always this constant ache, this pounding, this desire that never seems to be quite met. And I feel like the beginning of the Masnavi starts with those words. So perhaps we could just talk a little bit about that today.
Wonderful. We can start with the first couple of lines of the proem. Proem is the piece that begins a larger piece of poetry. And the Masnavi begins with a proem that has 35 lines. And the first 18 lines, the Sufis throughout the history said that it takes around 40 years to just get the first 18 lines. So here are the first two lines, which is, in a way, it's an invitation for the listener, no matter when he or she is living, in what time period. Maulana says, Bishno az ney chun hikayat mi konad, az judai ha shikayat mi konad, kaz neyestan ta mara bubride and, dar nafiram mard o zan nalide and.
It sounds so much more richer and more beautiful and sweeter in Farsi. Delicious. Well, I'm going to read the translation of these lines that you just shared with us. So Maulana starts with, listen to the reed flute as it tells its tale, complaining of separation as it wails. Since they cut my stalk away from the reed bed, my outcry has made men and women lament. So let's get into these words a little bit. What is Maulana talking about? And what is this longing and this ache that we are plagued with to present time?
So the first thing to notice is that in the two huge collections of work that he has gifted us, the Divan and the Masnavi, that the entire Masnavi opens up with listen. So it's really an invitation to go deep and to deeply listen. And the other thing that Maulana does in just the poem itself, it defines the state of a human being, the condition of a human being. The fire of longing is one of the top themes that Maulana continues to speak to. If this love had a fragrance, it would be longing. And what I'm reminded of is that years and years ago, I was in the presence of an aspen grove in the mountains. And aspens are my favorite trees. And I was just looking at them. I was in awe by the sound they make when their leaves shake. It sounds like rain. I'm in awe by the eyes they have on their barks. And I'm in awe of the fact that all their roots are connected. So they're basically one tree. And then in that moment, as I was witnessing this, I was seeing that the leaves were moving a little bit. I was looking at the form, right? And suddenly there was a shift in me that instead of seeing the movement of the form, I became aware of the presence of the wind. Then I recognized that we can look at form and be stuck there, or we can see that it is revealing something unseen, the presence of the wind. The longing that we are born with, this fire of longing that is the driver, the main driver of all we do, it's really a manifestation of the presence of love. And it's an invitation. Like it's like smelling something and then following the fragrance and not giving up until you find its source. So longing in this context, which is very different than human desires, this divine longing, this divine discontent, it's really there to guide us. It's not so much to get rid of, it's not so much to complain about. It's really to heed its call because it brings us home. It brings us to that innate nature, that zot of who we truly are, which is love.
Isn't it true, though, wouldn't you say that sometimes that desire, that longing does come to us in those very simple ways, very human ways? I often find that even addictions to substances or anything, addiction could be to anything, the constant race towards something is belying an underlying desire for something greater, which is perhaps manifesting in this very small way known to the person who's experiencing the addiction.
Absolutely. That's what Rumi is saying, that when the reed is cut from its reed bed and, they take the hot iron and put it into fire and poke holes in it, and they make sure it's hollow, and all the things it goes through, and all the individuals that blew through it, their own longings, that there is a unicity here, that we all have this one longing, that when we're not truly in touch with it, then we mistake other things for it. We mistake other manifestations of it. And addiction is the same. There is a longing and a yearning, but when we don't know what that really is, then we think it's the drug or is the substance. So in spirituality, and what the saints and mystics and the Sufis invite us is to bypass all of this trouble and go to the heart of the matter, to kind of win life to a point that we don't have to go through so much unnecessary suffering just to figure out that this burning longing that is inside of me will only be quenched. It only will be satisfied when I, as the drop, will become one with the ocean that is where I am from, which, again, it's a metaphor, but let's not kid ourselves. It's not philosophy we're talking about here. It's like right now, in this moment, we are drowned in that which we are looking for. What I love about the Persian language is this. The word in Persian for water is ab. And I say this slowly because I want you to pay attention to the movement of my mouth. Ab. And because of this, beautiful Sufis in the form of poetry, they basically speak to how fish in water seeking water, because when we look at fish, they keep going up, up. Yet they are drowned in water. And that is our case as well. It's an invitation that longing is also here as well.
So we're surrounded by it. It's around us. It's within us. And yet we're seeking it all the time.
And this is when Maulana, the artistry of Maulana, where he uses the pair of opposites always to point to beyond the opposite for us to get the truth. When we look at longing a little bit deeper and closely, we see that it's made of two sets of seemingly opposite things. One is union and the other is separation. And the tension between union and separation is what creates longing. But what's really important here is the fact that how can one experience longing and separation and know it's a separation, and know it's a discontentment, without somehow having tasted union to begin with. How can someone know they are separate if they haven't somehow, somewhere, be it, as the Quran says, the promise we made, or be it the experiences that we have had, the glance of the beloved, the pre-birth experiences? Somehow there must be a deep knowing, not something that we learn, that we have tasted the union, and now because of its lack, we feel the separation. And I think in this itself, it reveals that the union is closer to us than we might imagine.
And that union is what we set out in our lives seeking to fulfill. We long to reconnect to that primordial time in predestiny, when all of creation, according to the Quran, was gathered, and Allah asked, Alastu bi rabbikum, and everybody, am I not your Lord? And all of creation responded, indeed. And yet, to be cut from the reed bed, to be cut from that state, to come into this world, into these bodies, we're constantly aware that there was a place of wholeness and completeness that the human spirit once resided in, and that it longs and it aches to return there. And this time that we're here is that time to explore and to study and to know oneself and to find. But tell me about the nature of that finding, because the Sufis talk about it. It's in the Masnavi. So a lot of times, even when we are aware of the longing and we get deeper into the heart of things, we realize, okay, well, I have to live in this body while I'm here, and do the practices and remember where I come from and what I'm surrounded by and what fulfills me and nourishes me and is a fount of life for my heart, and still live with that ache and still live with that longing while in this human body.
Yes, in a way to kind of make sense of that indeedness that we promised. And we're here to fulfill the promise that we gave, to make it relevant for today's world, and not for people to think it's something historic or archaic, is to kind of normalize the fact that this longing that we feel is part of our nature, right? And you said it very beautifully. Islam and Sufism, they're embodied. They're very embodied. You cannot find any teachings that makes you get rid of your emotions or ignore your body or anything like that. But what it does teach is discernment, right? Discerning that which we long for, how much of it is conditioned. Because conditioning by its nature can be reconditioned, right? It's a conditioning, which means it's something that has been outside of me that I have inherited and added on. And then I have identified with, and then through habit, I'm caught in it now. But it's a conditioning. It has nothing to do with who I really am in this present moment, when through honesty, I look at myself, right? So part of it is to kind of filter through the things that are really pure longing, that are right here present, and the things that I try to fulfill based on the social, cultural, religious, geographical conditioning that I just inherit without knowing. I'm so in it, I'm so drowned in it that I can't even tell that actually a lot of what I do is based on condition. But for me, the most important thing is for an individual to really understand how natural this is, how biological this is, how innate this is. That Rumi is not talking about something that you need to go back to, that it's present right now. And for this, I always use this metaphor that makes many giggle, and they love it, places that I share this with. But it's a true story that when I was a teenager, through the Sufi school, I saw this incredible documentary at the time called The Miracle of Life, which was the first time they were able to insert a microscope inside of a human body. And I'm like a teenager, so I don't know what is going on, but I was guided to see this from the spiritual lens, right? So what it basically shows is the conception, right? You have all of these sperms shooting out towards one goal. And something that is very short in this microscopic kind of a view, it looks like a football field, right? So here are all the sperms shooting out towards a goal. They didn't have a GPS. No one lectured them. They all had this innate knowing for union with something that didn't even have a name. They didn't call it egg. We call it the egg. So they go on this journey. Then what's beautiful is that, not beautiful, but what's really interesting is that you have then thousands of them gathered around here in a pool. You have another 1,000 going actually backwards. You have another 10,000 going left, right? By the time it showed the egg, only a handful out of the millions had reached it. And the handful that had reached it, just like whirling, just like the movement of the planets, just like people circling around the Kaaba, just like the Sufis guide us to circle around our own heart, they go around the egg and they smash themselves against the wall. And they do it again and again and again, like a cage, like a bird trying to get out of the cage. This is like a bird trying to get in until one of them goes in. So I'm watching this as a teenager and I'm in awe. In one documentary with the guidance, I learned the human story, the human dilemma, that we all come with that longing and yet only a handful reach it. And on the way, so many other things, so many other false teachings and false shiny things, we mistake them for the egg, right? So at that age, I saw this, and I acknowledged that this longing that I've felt ever since I was 2, 3 years old is valid. I'm not insane. It's correct. It's just all I need to do is keep its focus on its main goal. And that in itself will get rid of a lot of pain and suffering in life. And it will make it more enjoyable, a life that is more focused, with more meaning.
So discernment is essential. Discernment is everything then in this path of life. To know, to follow that call of the heart, to know what to go for, to know what to seek, to know where. And of course, we make mistakes along the way. It's but natural. You lose your path and you come back to it. And that also is part of the journey. But to have that discernment and to keep sharpening that skill, in fact, also is part of the practice.
Indeed. Discernment is everything. And that is why Rumi says again and again and again and again, he points to the importance of having a guide, the importance of having a teacher, because from his perspective, life is short, right? And it's good to be with those who have been on this path, who can help you, save you a lot of energy and time. And you are right. When we do have a direction, when our intention is clear, then all the trial and errors are welcomed. They are part of moving forward. They are not part of kind of going cyclical, like a dog chasing its tail. It informs us. But first is that abiding by the longing and agreeing on the direction that allows us to be okay with all the mistakes. to be okay with all the ups and downs. It's then when we invite them and they inform us. Without a clear direction, without discernment, then every down could kind of burst our confidence, and we might go back to step one again, and or lose faith and all of this stuff. The journey still is difficult. It's as difficult as this nafs needs to be trained, and everyone's is unique, right? But then with a guide, with a teacher, with friends of the heart, not only becomes sweeter, but it becomes more meaningful. And those moments that we forget, faster and quicker we can be remembered again.
Absolutely, absolutely. If you're held in the right environment, in the right company, even if you've lost track and if you've lost that thought or that intention, you can be reminded of it because you're surrounded by it. This is so great. Thank you so much for exploring the ocean of longing with me a little bit. Until next time, Pouria.
My pleasure. Until next time.